All right, guys, happy rainy day in LA. I really love the change in weather, even though my backyard is flooded and none of the dogs want to go potty because they're not used to the rain. But, and it totally screws up my weekend training plans with the dogs. But hey, all right, we can't complain, that's for sure. So enjoying the change in weather. And I had a really great question on my Facebook. You guys, if you private message me on here, it could be months before I get to you, I'll be honest, and I apologize. I think I'm looking back in November right now where questions are, and I might have missed some of you along the way, so just FYI. But anyway, I did come across a question. It was a really good question. They have a terrier, and it's a Lakeland Terrier, and those are really cool dogs, really smart, really driven little maniacs. And anyway, they walk him on a slip leash and he walks ahead of them. And so many of my videos talk about how not to do that. Don't let your dog out ahead of you. But they said he doesn't really pull. They said that he's great with other dogs, meaning that he does not try to drag his owners over to see other dogs. But if one passes by, he'll say hello, and they assure me that if they don't want him to say hello, they can just say, let's go, and tug the leash. And he goes with them. Like, he doesn't care. Like, he's okay. I believe them. Dusty's like that, our border collie. So I believe them. But that he does pull sometimes towards a sniff, and he'll tug on the leash a bit. But most of the time he walks out ahead of them, full 6 foot of the length, without pulling. So why do you need me? Like, what is your question? Well, they're asking me if that's okay. And I just simply said, it's fine if you don't have any behavioral issues. Like, it's unusual. Maybe they live in a calmer environment. This is fine if they don't have behavioral issues. Now we get down to brass tacks, right? So I get a message from them back right away. And I took like a few weeks to get back to it. I'm sorry. But they said that they have a huge issue with bikes and skateboards. I said, well, then yeah, you have to teach a proper heel. But then I got to remember that they probably don't live in LA. If they did, they'd probably be sending me a contact form, you know, wanting training. And I was like, but how often do you even see a bike or a skateboard? And they were like, literally, it's like once every 4 or 5 months, and they walk their dog every day. It's just not an area where you see a lot of that stuff, especially the skateboards. They said it's mostly an occasional bike, but they can usually get distance from it to where they can get through to him with a good no and a tug of the leash. But if it goes by close or he gets surprised, he gets pretty nutty about it. So instead of proper heel, e-collar, like going through all this crazy structure, like if you were happy with your dog, like 95% of the time, and that small window of time isn't super dangerous. Like they're not asking me to have him off leash trained. That was not their question, okay? I don't think they'd mind me saying, like, they're a little bit older, and their goal is not to have this off leash reliable dog. They just want to know, they just want to do the very best by their dog. And I told them, I said, try a pet corrector. Just try a pet corrector. If you really want to set something up, get a friend with a bike and maybe try a bonker, or they could do some prong collar training. I'm like, but honestly, that's not very often. And they've had the dog, it's an older dog, it's like 5, 6 years old. They've had the dog since it was a puppy. I'm like, this seems like the amount of work that you have to put in to get rid of reactivity. It's pretty intense, guys. It's pretty intense. So if you're not dealing with something very often, the dog can't drag you down. If you've still got some good management where they flip out and you can be like, hey, cut it out, let's go. I'll be honest, I'm like, you know, if it's not broke, don't fix it. And if you're not ready to really do what it takes to try to get rid of reactivity, that you got to really work your life around it. You got to help your dog through many, many different things, not just the reactivity. So I was like, go try a pet corrector. You could also try bonking, but with bonking, you kind of need to set it up with someone you know. I wouldn't go out on the street bonking your dog with the neighbors going by on a bike wondering what the heck you're doing to your dog. But, and I was like, just try that. It probably won't make it magically go away, but it'll give you a little bit more leverage to be able to be like, come on, let's go, in case you get surprised, rather than being able to see it out ahead of you and give enough distance to where it's not a big deal. And let me know how it goes, and then don't even worry about it. See, sometimes I'm not crazy strict. I'm not this nutty person that thinks that everything has to be so hyper structured and disciplined, but I know that that's what I talk about all the time. And the reason I talk about it all the time is because that seems to be what people need the most. People are sick of being told to use treats and work under their dog's threshold to live a life with them, especially a life in the city, or they've got a dog killing livestock or running off the property and they can't recall them back. If they live in more rural areas, that tends to be the main issue with rural areas. And then in the city, dogs they need therapy. They got tons of issues with everything. So that's why I talk the way I talk about this crazy structure, crazy this, crazy that. Because I'll be honest, most of the people that I come across that live in the city, they want their dog to love people, love dogs, be off-leash trained, walk down the street perfectly. They want all these things, and I think those are great goals. So sometimes I do have to be a little bit of a dose of a reality check, mixed in with definitely doing the absolute best we can for the dog that you have. But when you want the world, you got to be willing to put the work in. And then when you've got reactivity or behavioral issues or anxiety or fear on top of that, which 90% of the dogs we see do, then that's a whole nother ball game of strict structure, training, rules, boundaries, training tools. All right. So the reason I'm making this video is just to point out that there are plenty of circumstances where I'm like, big deal, don't worry about it. Your little Maltese jumps up on you. It's 12 pounds. Is that your only problem? Big deal. So, I mean, because like the level of strictness that you have to have for a little dog not to jump, they can't have constant access to you. You know, you can't confuse them with constantly picking them up and cuddling them when you're trying to teach them not to jump. There's just so many circumstances where you really got to weigh the pros and cons of the effort that it takes and what you really want to accomplish with your dog. Now, if that Maltese had a lot of different issues, neediness, separation anxiety, or even just one of those issues, then yeah, that would be a different conversation. But if you just don't like your dog jumping up on you all the time, just bump them off, say no, mean it in the moment, and it'll lessen it enough to where it's not as big of a deal, but he'll still do it occasionally. You know what I mean? So there's room for this kind of stuff. It just may not feel like it with the way I talk most of the time on this page. Excuse me, the way I talk most of the time on this page, because we're dealing with mostly pretty serious things, or we're dealing with owners, and this is a good thing, we're dealing with owners that really just want more quality of life out of their dog in a city that is just congested with distractions all the time. And they just want more. They just want more quality of life, you know, more pleasant walks, things like that. And so that can be a tall order, all right? So anyway, just wanted to point that out to you guys, and hope you have a good, hope if you're in LA, you're enjoying the weather change. Enjoy it. It'll be warm soon.